Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I am your host, JP John Paz. With me today, a very special guest, former wrestling manager, wrestling valet. She was a model, she was an author, she was known as Lady Blossom. She is, of course, Mr. Jeanie Clarke. Welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you, and thank you for having me.
So what is going on in your world? What have you been up to?
Not too much really. Since I wrote my book, I think it's 6, 7 years ago. My main stuff that I'm doing is projects around the house and garden, and hanging out with my daughters. Um, that sort of stuff.
So, as far as the book, obviously through the shattered glass, like how did that all come about? Like, why did you want to write the book? How did the book kind of just blossom, if you will, to put pun intended, of course?
um, Basically, it's a book about recovery from uh, addiction, and it was a sort of to try and close that, because when you're in the rehab, and I'm also a counselor myself now, and I've actually worked in the rehab industry and for charity. Um, Basically, it was to show people the dangers. So I was quite open in the book about my own issues and I'm very, very honest. I don't know if you've read it.
No, I've just seen clippings and stuff of it. I haven't read it though. No.
Okay. It was therapeutic. And so basically, when you're in recovery,
Hmm.
you are encouraged ex- to write things down. Most people go into the industry quite in denial, and
Yeah.
I very defensive. And basically, like during the time that you're in there, they'll ask you things like to write a list. This is just a small example of all your resentments and etc. And and at first I was like, I don't have any. And then they'll say, like, start with your childhood. Like, and that was a place I didn't want to go back to. But before I knew it, I'd been writing, from 9 to 5 for 6 months that I was in there anyway. I'd been writing so much down that I thought when I finally came out that I had a book. And I think I was very honest, and I was really the the motivation was to highlight the uh, addiction and the dangers of it, and use myself as an example for others to, hopefully, if they were suffering from it, to, you know, I I was very, very honest about it, and to be honest and hold up your hand. I need help. It's
Yep.
okay. Yeah, that was the motivation for it. Nothing else.
A lot of wrestlers or wrestling personalities, people that are in the business, when they write the book, they do say it is therapeutic. Sometimes it's good, like to kind of go back but then that also say sometimes it's, it can be painful going back and writing the book and going through stuff like that.
Very traumatic. And when they brought up, um, I was somewhat in denial. I was very defensive. They said, okay, we'll start with your childhood. And I did not want to go there because it was very traumatic and, yeah, very painful. But I think that going down the road of pain um, is important, just to get out the emotions and feelings that are long buried, or very long, um, you block your defense mechanisms, you block. And I wanted to actually bury myself, if that's the craziest thing to say. I pretty much buried myself in the book in the hope that it would give some understanding of how important it is to be honest.
When
Quite painful, and also therapeutic.
when you did write the book, obviously, through the shattered glass, is it a lot of also like your history in the wrestling business? I mean, do you run through the gamut of your entire time in wrestling as well?
Well, yeah, my co-authors were much better at timelines in the pro wrestling industry than I was. So I had a lot of help. Like the forward was by Kevin Von Erich, and my co-authors got the timelines for like Chris and I come in working first in World of Sport, and then we arrived in Los Angeles and Santa Monica, and we went up to Portland, and we split up. And how Chris and I got back in a friendship to do the ex-wife angle at the Sportatorium, which was amazing. And then on to the stint I had as Lady Blossom. And my co-authors really had a lot of knowledge on the actual industry, the wrestling part, whereas I was giving them info on my personal life. So it's a combination of wrestling and my personal. It's just my story. There's no interest in anything other than an absolute honest biography of my story.
With you and saying,
Not got allergies.
no problem. With you, and you mentioned World of Sport, and obviously Chris Adams, gentleman Chris Adams. Did you like wrestling? Did you want to get into wrestling? Like when you first did that, was it just because you were dating him? Like what was the deal with getting into the actual wrestling business?
Really kind of a fluke, if I'm honest. I had a rather traumatic childhood. I touch on it very lightly in the first chapter. And a friend of mine, Marion, her father was massive of the World of Sport, the English World of Sport. I'm not sure if you would even remember because you might be too young, but in the 80s, it was maybe before that, it was massive in the UK. And that would be like the Big Daddy era. And they had the 2 falls, 2 submissions, or a knockout, or rounds. And I happened to be with my girlfriend, Marion, whose dad, I always heard it in the background. It was on the TV at his house. Although I wasn't really aware of anything to do with it. And he got unwell one day, and he gave me and my friend his tickets because he had like recurring tickets to the local auditorium where they had it. And I went with my friend, and that's where I met Chris, accidentally really, but that's the beginning. If I hadn't gone that day by a pure accident, I probably would not have met Chris. But I did meet Chris, and basically he gave me his phone number. Excuse me, no, he asked for my phone number, and we're going back to like when I was 19, so I'm 64, so it's a long time ago. And he actually asked me to meet up with him, but my mom, because back then we only had landlines, and my mom was like getting annoyed because he kept calling and calling and calling and calling.
Yep.
And eventually she told me, he's annoying me. You need to call him back. And I did. And he invited me to the Birmingham Motor Show. And I thought, oh, that sounds like fun, because I'd never been to anything like that before. And that was the start of my relationship with Chris. And we started the journey to the States together in when I was a kid, really, 19.
Did you think that you would like fall in love with the business? Did you want to be a part of the business, be the manager, valet, or were you like, I don't know if this is really for me, but he's kind of pushing you along and wanting you to be in it?
He was pushing it in England way before we ever came to the States. So he came up with a really great idea, because the English wrestling was done in rounds, or the British wrestling was done in rounds. Chris was very creative, and he always had ideas all the time, wrestling schools, and he said I should be his second. And that's kind of like in a boxing area where the second comes in between rounds to give water and a towel to. And actually, I did that, and it was all over the press, the tabloids. It was very, very popular.
So, as far as coming to the States, you wanted to come with him, or was that something where you wanted to go and, like what was the deal with you guys coming over together to the States?
Well, yes, we were now a couple, living together, and he met up with a guy called Yasu Fuji, Chris being a judo guy, and the Labels, who ran the, I think I'm going to get it right, the NWA out of Los Angeles, because that judo connection. So uh, they brought him in, and yes, we got on the flight together and lived in Santa Monica. And Chris and I loved it because we were from a smallish town in the Midlands of England, and here we were on this beautiful, beautiful beach in Santa Monica, and we were like, wow, it was just like, this is crazy. It's just amazing. And we spent a lot of time on the beach. And we had a little place we stayed at called the Flamingo West Hotel. Funnily enough, my daughter lives out there now, and we did a little drive to try and find where that motel was, but it's been long gone now. But many memories came back. Just Santa Monica Pier and all the places Chris and I were at together. And but I think back then he had a few gigs, like I think San Bernardino or here and there, but the money wasn't enough to make us able to really live really well. And we actually spent a couple of nights on the beach, sleeping on the beach. But we were like 19, 20 years old, and it was an experience. But when you're young, you kind of just go with the flow.
Absolutely. So where do you go after California? Is that when you go to Portland, or like how do you kind of get from one place to the next? And like, is it you basically he's going to work one territory, he's going to go to maybe Portland, and then that's the way you guys are going to start making more money?
Yeah, obviously I was pregnant in Los Angeles with my first daughter, Jade, and Chris actually went to Japan. One of the first memories I have of Los Angeles was that Chris was working with Hulk Hogan in Japan, and we got invited to the same arena, the Olympic Auditorium, by Hulk Hogan, and we actually went to the filming of Rocky with him. And as you can imagine, a 19-year-old girl, because we had seen the Rocky movies in the UK, is here in Santa Monica from the UK, and suddenly on the film set of Rocky. And funny story is Chris, he was we were sitting like a few rows back, what as a guest of Hulk Hogan, and Chris goes, go ask Sylvester Stallone to take a photograph with you. And I was like, no, I'm not. It's embarrassing. And he was like, no, go, take the opportunity. And I went, no, you go. And then he kept pushing me to do that. And finally I gave in, and I walked up to Sylvester Stallone was facing the other way from me, and I kind of tapped him on the shoulder, and his bodyguard's arms were like this, come out, and I went, excuse me, may I have a photo? And he said yes, okay, and he came over to where we were, and Chris took an absolutely perfect photo of me and Sylvester Stallone, and I was so nervous that we only had those little Instamatic cameras back then that you had to take to the pharmacy to get the pictures back. And I'm only like 5 foot, like tall, so tiny. And I took the picture, and I remember the pictures coming back. And Chris goes, oh, let me see. And I remember mine was perfect, but the one I took of them, I'd accidentally only got it from the neck down. Chris was like, oh man, but I accidentally cut their heads off.
That's pretty cool experience. You guys were able to do that and get out there and go to the Rocky 3. It's awesome.
You could imagine, because I'm this girl from a small town in the UK. I accidentally, if you'd like me, Chris, we start a relationship, we move in together. Within a year, we're in the States, and within the first few months of being in the States, we're on the Rocky set. Because Chris said he had some of his very best matches with Terry, so yeah, it was incredible. When you think about it, you'd never dream it was possible that we would leave England and be on this beautiful beach and on the Rocky set. It was like something you'd never dream would be so real. You would find that like a dream. Pinch me, is that real?
Yeah, definitely. With Chris, I know you guys never married her, right? So is that because you guys were so young? Did you not want to get married? Did he not want to get married? How come that never happened?
Yeah, I've been asked that question a lot. Marriage never came up between either one of us. He never wanted to marry him. And I never thought about marriage. I was just too young to think about it. And he was 24, I was 19. So no, it really didn't come up, the question of marriage. It never once came up.
Now, recently, I know they announced Vice, the Dark Side of the Ring people, that he's going to have his own Dark Side of the Ring, and obviously, they're interviewing people of his past. Is that something like where you're a part of it? You didn't want to be a part of it. You do want to be a part of it. Is it painful talking about it? Because obviously, his demise was
No,
way too soon.
he's in question. Yes, it was difficult because when I wrote my book, it was kind of a closure, and in a way, thinking or bringing it up. And I did do a very long interview, although I'm apprehensive to say what was included in it because it's not been aired. But yeah, because I had to kind of relive everything. So it was slightly a difficult, but I think he does fit like a character for the dark side due to the latter part of his life. Yes.
So did you? Well, I guess they probably contact you, right? I mean, you have no idea if they're filming stuff, so they contact you and basically say, "Hey, we're doing this," and you said, "Yes, I'll do it," and you kind of had no problem doing it, I guess.
They did, yeah. They contacted me, and I'd worked with Jason before, obviously, on the Gina episode. So I was very wary. We had a couple of hiccups because my daughter's partner became very unwell. He's a journalist, and so we had a little scheduling issue, but we got there. So that's the most important thing, and we managed to get the interview. I don't know if they've actually announced Chris yet, but um, I I think they've announced a few people, but I'm not sure if they've.
Yeah, yeah, he's officially, I think, been announced. I think it was Bam Bam Bigelow, Chris
Oh,
Candido, Chris Adams. Obviously, there was a couple that they mentioned that are going to be a part of this season. I think they almost mentioned every episode that's going to be airing. I think it's airing late May.
yeah, yeah.
Should be, it should be interesting to kind of do that. But going back to him and you in the business, like, how do you get from Portland to world class? And is that the trajectory, Portland to world class?
No, well, for him it is. Basically, um, well, Chris, Chris and I split up, but we still remained really good friends. Because I think once we got to the States, his head like was turning every direction at the other women, and I I did find that difficult. But I suppose as a 64-year-old, I can understand more how temptation got to him. But we had split up before in LA, and got back together. And then we drove from Los Angeles up to Portland. Now, I remember we stopped at a Wendy's on the way getting into Portland, and he just looked at me and he says, "I'm not going to like it here." And I think basically what he was saying is maybe he would miss the beach or something. I don't know. But he wasn't too thrilled about it at first. But then he settled in quite well in Portland. But we didn't have the technology we have today, so um, there was issues between me and him uh, being a bit of a ladies' man, I suppose. Yeah. So I ended up splitting up from him.
So you stayed in Portland. That's where you met Billy Jack?
Yeah, and Chris went to world class, and I went to England actually, and Billy went to Florida. So we all kind of split up, and then Chris and I had a daughter, so we were very amicable. We made a good, we had a good friendship. Um, Outside of the romantic didn't work, but our friendship worked, and we had a daughter. And I met Tony, his wife. She would come to Florida, and we would share custody of Jade, my daughter. And I think he'd first called me to say he wanted to do an angle. I think there was an angle with Jimmy Garvin, and Precious and Sunshine previously. And he actually wanted to do an angle with Gina and me and him and Tony. And that didn't work out. But I did move to Dallas so we could be closer together for our daughter. And obviously, we did work an angle with Steve.
What did you think about actually like wrestling? Like I know Chris and Tony are wrestling. What did you think about actually getting in there and having matches? And did you train at all for that?
I had no wrestling ability at all.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I was meant to be part. You don't see it as much. I miss that actually. Because you used to back then you'd have like say Jim Connor, Racket, or Miss Hyatt, Rich Bag. So I only came in as a valet. I did not come in with wrestle, but these hat fight evolved, and that was not like with any training in wrestling.
Did you like? I know you said you didn't have ability, but did you like it at all, or no? You didn't really like taking bumps and stuff like that.
And I remember Chris directing it, everything I did, and he told me to watch Joan Collins, who was on a show called Dynasty, and that will maybe before your time, but she played like a really villainous ex-wife, and Linda Evans played like a really good person. And I did watch the show, and that's where a lot of the feel for what Chris wanted. And I came in with Steve, this villainous ex-wife, and a lot of our interviews were amazing. And it was just Friday night, Saturday morning, which was local to me from where I lived, so it was easy for me to perform that. And I think it got feud of the year, or maybe the top 3 feud of the year. So it really worked out really well.
How did you and Steve get together? Is that because Chris trained him, or you knew Steve a little bit and then got in, or was it because of the angle?
Oh, totally the angle. I never went to the Sportatorium at all until I don't know what year. I'm going to say 89-ish is when Steve went through Chris's wrestling school. I'm guessing that. I didn't even know anything about that until Chris phoned me up and asked me to do the ex-wife angle. And like I say, a lot of people think Chris and I were married because of its name, the ex-wife angle. But we, you know, really did a great job. I think, Chris directed me, and I was able to perform the villain. And obviously Steve was a natural, so he did really. So I think the chemistry between all 4 of us, I sometimes look back and think it was extremely fun. And Tony and I were really good friends, so it worked. Yeah.
When you look at that and they're saying the ex-wife angle, like did you think like, this is like a little too personal, like as far as wrestling, or were you just like, if Chris thinks it's a good idea, let's just do it?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd known Tony 5 years prior. She had been coming to Florida. I lived in this apartment building next to Gina. And we'd been long time friends, so I didn't think it was weird, but there were a few people that inside the industry that probably did. Jerry Jarrett would come to mind there, like, how does that work? But I think it was an exception to the rule that Tony and I just were incredibly good friends.
So even Jerry Jarrett, who obviously he's running, I guess, USWA and World Class at this point, even Jerry Jarrett was kind of questioning you guys, like, guys, this is maybe too real.
This is like his ex, and this is his wife, and yet Tony and I were like really cool together. We'd go shopping, we'd go eat dinner together, we'd sit together, we'd watch movies, and I suppose it is something most people probably wouldn't think, because it certainly didn't happen to me later on. But it did work, yeah. Chris, Tony, and I were really all good friends, yes.
That's pretty amazing because when you like look at it from like a fan perspective, or even looking back, like, wow, that must hit so close to home. That's so personal. That that's such a interesting angle, but it's like a little villainous in a certain way. But that's kind of so different that you guys actually got along and didn't mind.
No, we got along great. We really did. And um, I was really kind of shocked when some people inside the industry thought it was a shoot, because it wasn't at all. A matter of fact, after we did our performance, we'd go back and talk about it. And yeah, we were cool, totally cool.
So,
Oh,
did you like?
really,
Did
the
you
her.
Did you like the Sportatorium in general? Because everyone's always saying like such a legendary venue, but a lot of the wrestlers like, well, when you get there, it's not really kind of what you think. I mean, it's legendary, yes, but it's not like the nicest place they've ever been to.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it had a special kind of buzz to it, like a vibe. Um, it just had a lot of regular fans, but it had an energy there that was great. Um, I can't really put my finger on it, but I thought it was amazing place, really. I think a lot of stars or wrestlers went through this auditorium would probably say the same thing. I mean, obviously the Von Erichs were there. That was the main, the Von Erichs were like gods. They were probably as popular as the Dallas Cowboys at the time. They,
When-
any shop you went to, you'd see Von Erich board games or Von Erich cards or Von Erich lunch boxes and blah blah blah. So I mean, they were like Beatlemania, in Dallas. So they gave the place this energy that, when they came out, like everybody was. And the only match I went to was the one. Also, was the hair match that was in. I'm going to say Will Rogers, but it was in Fort Worth. And I remember the Von Erichs coming out, and the crowd, like it reminded me of Beatlemania. It was so cool, and that was the match that I remember with Chris and Gina and Kevin and Carrie, and I think there were about 15,000 people there.
big time show, big time moment. When you look at it, there's so many great moments and stars and everything in world class, but there's so many tragedies as well, almost equal amount of tragedies.
It's so sad. Yeah, I mean, I can remember it like so well, and Carrie, Kevin, and Chris, and like the buzz, and you you, you think, wow, the well, obviously not Kevin, but like you think about how did that all become so tragic? Everything, like in happened, Carrie and Chris Von Erich and Gina and Chris as well, and it's just wow. How did that go from so high to so tragic?
Man, there's just so much. Like I said, all the Von Erichs, even Gino, obviously, who you guys were very close with. Was who knows what happened with Gino? Really, I mean, they never really solved the case. But so many crazy things happen in one territory. It's nuts.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So when you decide, I guess, to leave World Class, right? That's you and Steve, I guess, are married at this point. Decide to go to WCW, or how does that happen?
I didn't decide to leave. I don't know how it would transpire because we had like about a year. Um, pre-planning, if you'd like, of the angle. Chris wanted it to go on for a year or so. Basically, we just arrived on either a Saturday morning, I think, when they did the taping, and it was over. It was sad. I think maybe something with Jerry or whatever happened. It happened like overnight almost. We arrived and it was over. No real timeline of, sort of when. Just became over. And then actually what happened is Steve went on to Memphis as friends at that time.
So, did you go with him to Memphis, or you stayed?
Well, you know what? I actually owned my own business, and I had 10 employees, so I could not go because I was making so much money in my own business that, I mean, that's where Steve says did he say is potato and tuna diet? They
Yes.
paychecks. Mine was like $20, something like that, on a Friday, where I had my own Telegram business. So I would not have sold my house to go make that kind of. Not that I'm being rude, but Steve was happy to go on to Memphis and pay his dues, so to speak. But I was like, no, I'm gonna continue in Dallas with my business.
And Steve has that famous story where he's looking at his check, and Jeff Jarrett, who's the son of Jerry Jarrett, says to him, "Keep staring at it. It's not going to change the dollar amount." So obviously that kind of fueled Steve, and him and Jeff obviously made up now, but I mean they had a bad relationship for years because of that.
Yeah, those paychecks were quite small, obviously. I really did like Jerry, though. I thought it was really nice to me personally, and I did a podcast with him, but I was not dependent on the wrestling for my money. I was making very good money with my own business, but I think I remember going to see Steve in Memphis. I think I may have done 1 or 2 shows there, where we drive the bus from the Sportatorium once or twice, but I would be losing a lot of money if I stayed. So Steve and I were seeing each other by then, and I would fly into Nashville and we'd hang out and stuff, and he was staying at a place called the Congress Inn, and he was quite poor at that time, but obviously he stuck with it and he got the call from WCW. I think
When did
maybe have helped him. I'm not sure, but from LA when Chris and I arrived, and he was very nice.
so when do you decide to go to WCW? Because Dusty Rhodes, brings him in, then he kind of brings you in. You become Lady Blossom. How does that all happen? And like, where do you get the name from? And kind of where do you get the contract from? How do they bring you in?
Very strange. Another fluke along the way. Steve had given Magnum, Terry Allen, a contact number for him, which was my number. And I accidentally I answered my own phone, and Magnum is on the phone. He's like, "Is Steve there?" And I'm like, "No, not just now. He would you like me to give him a message?" And he just sort of got in a conversation with me, really, and he was like, "Oh, where are you from?" Probably because I had a British accent, and what do you do, and etc. And I said, well, I did work with Steve at the Sportatorium on an angle before that folded. And he goes, oh really? So can I see a tape of you and Steve? And they had partnered him up with a girl, Veronica, but I don't think they were happy with that. So Magnum says to me, oh, perhaps you could go meet Dusty in Houston on Tuesday, because they had a show. I mean, it went boom, boom, boom so quick. And I went, because I was in a relationship with Steve at that time. I went to Houston, and I spoke to Dusty for like 5-10 minutes. And then they said, be at TV next week. So it was just a phone call, really, from
Yes,
Magnum.
just like that, you're in.
Yeah, never
Did you
sent
did
them
you
any.
did you want to be like Lady Blossom? Did you want to be on TV? Is that something that you're like, this is great? You know, it's almost like the soap operas or whatever, you know, like Dynasty stuff. Like, is that something you wanted?
Well, I mean, at that time, Steve and I were in a relationship. It took a while to grow because we were just friends, but that would have been a big influence. And yeah, I mean, I just decided to go to Atlanta and be, Steve and I could be together. And I did miss the direction of Chris, because at the end of the day, I don't know if you've seen any of the angle where I played the villain. Most of it was directed by Chris, so I missed Chris's direction, because I would talk to him, let's say maybe a day or two before, and he'd say, say this, say that, say this. And they didn't really give me a speaking role in WCW. So I did miss Chris's direction, but I was like, if you blink, you'll miss me, because by Halloween Havoc, I was pregnant again with my daughter Stephanie. So I wasn't really in the industry for very long. You know, if you think about it, 5 months is all. And obviously, they had me take bumps, so I had to be really careful, because I was starting to get my own bump.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. You gotta be careful. But it's interesting. Like they didn't have you talk much, even though you could have. But they have you like almost like dressed up like a beauty pageant queen. Almost, you know, you got the nice dresses. You've got evening gowns. I mean, they really kind of they pumped you up as like I guess like a pageant queen almost. Like is that what Lady Blossom is supposed to be, or high society? I guess.
And that was Chris's idea from the Joan Collins Dynasty. And the Howard part of it. Um, Truthfully, I had a friend who owned a Dallas, and they had like the most amazing, expensive dresses, and that was part of my character. To come in and, you know, be a bit la di da, you know, and relate to royalty and all of that stuff that I was blabbing. And that was just part of my gimmick, was to be like a high class kind of bitchy kind of, you know, role that I played. And but Dusty gave me the name Lady Blossom. I hated it. I hated it really bad. Really, I wish I'd have come up with something.
Why did you hate that name?
I thought it sounded really silly.
Where did he get the name from? Like where? What is that?
Oh gosh, he said I apparently I was blossoming, um, with a reference to,
Right.
but I wish I'd have come up with something for myself uh, outside of that, because I went to Steve, I really hate that. And he said, yeah, it kind of sucks. So Steve and I both agreed. But, it's what it is.
And it's funny because, like, he's stunning Steve, right? I mean, does that really fit him? I mean, he was great and great character, obviously great wrestler even then. But do you think stunning Steve really fit him? It almost seems when you really look at it, it's like he's not really like that kind of character.
Yeah, I think that's why Mantel gave him that. Funning Steve, and I think Dutch Salad said to him, come up with a name. And Steve didn't come up with one. So he said, all right, you're stunning, Steve Austin. And that was his name in WCW. And obviously, when he went into WWF at the time, he was the ringmaster until the cup of tea.
Yeah. So what is that infamous story? I know it's kind of been out there, but explain like what that is, because now everyone knows Stone Cold, but I don't think that was a very big phrase or a big thing that, in the 90s that people knew what Stone Cold meant. They wouldn't know what it means now.
I think Steve came up with the concept himself, because he saw a show. I'm not even remembering the guy's name, the Iceman. And, that's where all those names came, the Ice Dagger or Fang, McFrost, all of that. And I really do drink hot tea. It's English. It's the English cure for everything. We all drink tea here, because we had it in our bottle maybe when we were 3 months old. And I think, a lot of times we think our cups of tea are, my husband's just got in a car wreck. Oh, I put the kettle on. Let's have a cup of tea. Oh, that's going to labour. Make her a cup of tea. It's kind of a weird thing we have with tea. But Steve actually started drinking tea, and I just said to him, oh, stop worrying about it, drink your tea before it gets stone cold. And that's where the name came up.
Is that a big British expression, Stone Cold?
Yeah, I remember my mom saying it as a kid. Better eat your dinner before it gets stone cold. So, so we have a lot of expressions here, and that is one of them. Yeah, stone cold.
One of those things that just, man, right expression, if you will, right phrase, right time. And it fits him perfectly. You know what I mean? Stone Cold Steve. It fits perfect.
Yeah, I mean, again, just one day, he was sitting on the end of the bed. He was thinking about this list he had from the office, all these names. And I remember Brian Pillman and him laughing so hard at how corny they were. And I just said, drink your tea before it gets stone cold. But like I say, it's quite a common thing to say here, or I grew up hearing it. So,
Yeah, some of those names, like you said, Frosty McFreeze and all the other stuff. I mean, just awful, terrible names. And he's not the only one. They've done that before for a bunch of other guys too. But sometimes they come up with the corniest things. You're like, this is not going to work. I'm gonna have to create my own name.
yeah, I think Steve had a very good idea of what he wanted to be when he saw the show, The Iceman. Kind of cold blooded, um, emotionless. Uh, I wish I could remember his name. Can you remember the name of that guy? I can't remember. Lewinsky or something. Anyway, he was a guy who got the Iceman. Obviously, was used by Iceman King Parsons, but he wanted something like a cold-hearted character. So he knew what he wanted. He just couldn't get the name to go with it. And that, when I said that with the T, I went, "Oh my God, there you go, Stone Cold." And he was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, that serial killer, whatever his name was, the Iceman, the serial killer, Lewinsky or Lewinsky or whatever.
Lewinsky or something. Yeah, he was a hitman for a mafia or something.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
But it,
and he knew that that was the concept he wanted. So it was a kind of a 50-50 thing. And I came up with the Stone Cold, but it is an expression that the English use quite often.
with Steve, what's the relationship, if any, with him today? Because I know you have children together. Is there a relationship as far as him speaking and you guys on good terms, or what's going on with you guys?
Um, and sadly, no. He hasn't spoke to me in many, many years.
How about with the children?
Um, I think, he speaks to them periodically. More, Steph lives in LA, so she's uh, closer. I think more so than Cassie lives in me. I don't think they've spoken. Uh, I don't really like to talk about
Hmm.
their death. If you can understand, I'm aware that, uh, and I have always encouraged them to have. I've never, like I've said, it's your dad. You can keep me out of it. Talk to him. Um, I don't. I never wrote my book for any other reason than to write my story. And I think if I buried anybody, it was me. And I don't know what made him feel. I don't know what the right word is. I mean, I'm very open. I'm not in denial of addiction. But I think that he may have judged me or something. I don't know. But no, I don't. I haven't spoken to Steve in many years, and usually when my name comes up, to be honest, it's quickly, the door's quickly shut.
So as we wind it down here, we head towards the finish. So you left the business because you got pregnant, you got kids. Did you ever, or had kids? Excuse me. Did you ever want to go back into the business, or once you had children, you were kind of done? Like, yeah, enough's enough. I don't need to be doing this anymore.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I had my daughter Cassie when I was 36, I think. So, um, yeah, I didn't think I was young enough, maybe, anymore to pursue anything in it. And yeah, I was like a full-time mom, and I was happy with that. Because I really do adore my children unconditionally, love them so much. And sadly, we are divided. And I learned something that you're really powerless over people who choose not to have a relationship with you. Like, you can't you can't force it. So but you can hope, and I think that's a really good way to end this, because typically, or statistically, um, addiction, or really bad progressive addiction, ends three ways, which is death, jail, or hospital. And I think that if you get to where you're brave enough to say, I have an issue, and you go into treatment, then you always have hope to make amends. And so I still have hope to make amends, but it takes two people.
Yeah. Yep. Well said. Definitely. When you look back at your time in wrestling, like, would you give it like a thumbs up, thumb down? Like, I know obviously, you met some people, married, obviously you had kids through through the wrestling business and through some of the wrestlers, obviously you met in wrestling business. But do you look back as a positive or a negative or neither?
Do you know what? Whenever I'm with my kids, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't have so much. I mean,
So as far as the book, just tell us, where everybody can find the book, get the book if they want to still, get it. And obviously it's called Through the Shattered Glass, but where can everybody buy if they want to purchase it?
it's been a while. I do have copies that I sign. Would do it straight away, or it's either on Amazon .com.uk, and they can get it there. And um, if they want it signed, obviously I'll do that for the same price. I have got quite a few at the house.
Now, where can everybody find you on social media and connect with you that way? So maybe they can, maybe see what you're up to, or if you post a lot, or if you want people to maybe reach out to you about the book through social media. How can people get in touch with you and find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Jeanie Clarke or Jeanie Williams, and I'm on Twitter at Clarke Jeanie.
And that's it, right? Nowhere else.
Come on, huh?
Nowhere
No,
else. That's it.
yeah,
Keep it simple, right?
yeah.
But Ms. Clarke, thank you so much for all the time today. I really appreciate you, taking all the time and talking about your career, your book, and maybe even reliving some stuff. So thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
I'm really grateful to you as well. Thank you so much.